Alrighty, I want to thank everybody very much for taking time out of their day to join me in this urgent update on some severe weather that we do have on the way to the United States, and just the general storm system, the details on the system that is going to be causing all of that severe weather as we go into the end of the upcoming week, as we go into our Friday, and as we push into the upcoming weekend, including Saturday night, as well as into Sunday and Sunday night. I'm particularly concerned about some of the action that we could see in some parts of the country as a result of this system. And I'm going to tell you now, I'm issuing some of the most dangerous level highlights I ever have. Again, I'll repeat that. Some of the most dangerous severe weather highlights I ever have on my ONW custom severe weather scale. I'll be unveiling that graphic as we go a little bit deeper into this live stream. Whether you're with me live watching this, whether you're tuning in after, all of this information is very vital. So make sure, more importantly than hitting the like button or subscribing, like I say in many videos and streams, the most important thing you can do with this information, whether you're hearing it from me, whether you're hearing it from the National Weather Service, whether you're hearing it from another accurate source here on YouTube or somewhere else, make sure you're sharing information about this tornado outbreak that is possibly on the way. In multiple days and multiple rounds from Friday night to Saturday and Saturday night, or the fire weather conditions we're going to see down in the South Central Plains. I'll talk about all of these various impacts that the storm is going to have to offer and unpack, that I'm going to unpack for you in this update. Make sure that you're sharing this stream or something else, some form or fashion of this related information to friends and family that are going to be in the affected areas, because this is going to be a very important live stream right here, and all of the information regarding the storm is going to be very important. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Impacts pushing out of the west and then into other parts of the Central Plains by the time we go into our Friday, March 14th. I'm not going to spend too much time on this overview with the European model, because I've been overviewing this storm for almost a week now, as something big has been anticipated to move into the plains, and here it comes. Out of Nebraska, moving towards Iowa. By the time we get into our Friday, March 14th, is where we're likely going to see a big area of some wind and rain. Multiple impact zones that we're going to have to be watching around this time at late Friday into Friday evening. Number one, with high winds gusting upwards of 50 to 60 miles per hour in some parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, even back towards New Mexico, from the southwest to the northeast, along with dry conditions. That is going to create an extremely critical fire outlook for our Friday. And if you know anybody in these zones, make sure that they're prepared just in case something wild goes down. And of course, make sure that friends and family, or if you specifically live in this area, that you're not intending to burn or do anything like that. It would be very foolish. I'm just going to flat out say it. It is going to be very foolish if you're burning in conditions like we're going to be having Friday afternoon and evening in a place like Kansas, in a place like Oklahoma, in a place like Texas. We might have a little bit of snow wrapping back around the tail end of this storm around that time, maybe some blizzard conditions due to high winds along with that into some parts of the Dakotas and Nebraska. But the main thing that really deserves the most attention out of this storm is this boundary right here. It's going to be called the dry line. As all that wind comes wrapping around the storm system and down through the southern and central plains, it's kicking up a boundary that's going to force storms around and east of it by the time we get into our Friday evening, from eastern Nebraska and southern Minnesota, back down here through Iowa, parts of Missouri, right along the Mississippi River into St. Louis, Missouri, and into western parts of Illinois. Even back down to the lower Mississippi Valley. We're going to have to watch whatever fires up with this boundary into our late Friday and Friday evening, even to the nighttime hours, for damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes. I'll dissect more of the specific aspects of that threat in my latest ONW severe scale here in just a minute, but let's just keep the general overview going for the near term. By the time we get out of our Friday and into our Saturday, a couple of additional things we'll be watching. More wind and snow and wintry weather wrapping back around the back end of this storm system into parts of the Dakotas. Western Minnesota likely picking up on maybe some brief freezing rain or sleet before that transition to snow on the cold side of the system through Saturday. And then here's your remnant line of severe weather left over from our Friday night by the time we get here through the Saturday morning time frame. I'm not anticipating severe weather outbreak conditions to necessarily be ongoing at Saturday at 8, 9, 10, 11 in the morning, but we could certainly be watching at least isolated severe weather continuing from the overnight hours into parts of the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes, as well as the beginning of new low pressure forming down here towards the lower Mississippi Valley and Mid-South, which could help between it and the old one that will already be moving on up into the upper Midwest in getting very active times of severe weather, possibly even damaging tornadoes getting going as early as Saturday morning over parts of the lower Mississippi Valley. Something we're going to have to watch, but that threat is likely going to develop even more as we go through the daylight hours. So as you come from Michigan and Indiana and Ohio, back down here through Kentucky, parts of far southern Illinois, through Tennessee, back into Mississippi, far southeast Arkansas, southeastern and eastern parts of Louisiana, and then eventually on over here into Alabama, Georgia, the Florida Panhandle. Especially the further south you go through this area where I'm circling in particular, we have the potential for a very incredible tornado outbreak that is looking more and more likely out of this secondary area of low pressure that's going to help out the original one by the time we get through Saturday and Saturday night. That'll continue pushing east, bringing severe weather, bringing gusty winds and rain through other parts of the Ohio Valley possibly, and especially back down towards the Carolinas and the southeast, where it looks like we'll get that hit out of Georgia and Tennessee and then moving into the Carolinas and Virginia through the early to mid-morning time frame on our Sunday. Then from there, we're smooth sailing ahead with this storm continuing to make its way towards the East Coast, and I don't even want to rule out the fact that by the time we get into our Sunday afternoon and evening, we couldn't rule out some severe weather here as you get closer to the immediate east coast of the United States, from parts of North Florida and eastern Georgia all the way up that eastern seaboard and into a place like New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and surrounding zones. So I'm going to be dissecting more of those specific details here in just a minute. Let's talk a little bit about the winds this storm system is going to have to offer up, though. I'm using this European model first because this is going to be one of the bigger concerns here by the time we go into our Friday afternoon. Let me go ahead and pull up that window capture so that you can see it. There we go. The key is going to be on the bottom of your screen now. As you can see, by the time we push into the afternoon hours of our Friday, March 14th of 2025, very concerned about these winds that are going to be wrapping around and under that low pressure system as it parks itself right on up here around Nebraska. Strong winds coming back around initially from the north as they come through parts of the Front Range of the Rockies, and then sliding in from the southwest to the northeast through parts of North Texas, Oklahoma, over into parts of Kansas, and eventually Missouri as storms move through. A lot of these gusts in the orangish shades, upwards of 50 to 65 mile per hour winds. And again, I hate to use this word or to make anybody feel bad if they end up doing this, but you're very foolish if you're burning in these kinds of conditions down into the South Central Plains as a result of the very dry fuels that are going to be in place due to a lack of rain recently. And of course, that lack of rain is going to continue as you're not going to get much of anything in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas out of this particular system. Into Saturday, gusty winds for parts of the Midwest, along with any of that winter weather that could wrap around the back end of this storm into places like the Dakotas, Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa. Eventually, some of our stronger winds will be ahead of that extra area of low pressure that will push the storms eastbound. I don't think winds will be as strong by this point in time as we go out of Saturday night into Sunday, but Sunday afternoon could still have some breeziness, especially as you get close to the East Coast, around and ahead of that possible extra line of storms that we see kind of refueling as we go through the day. And one last thing I do want to talk about for the overview sake of this storm. Here's what's left out of the storm. More snowfall through parts of the Mountain West. I've been talking about that in the most recent update, so not going to cover that too much. But the signal for snow for the northern plains continues to look like it's going to include this little border zone right here of the Dakotas, and then pushing into western Minnesota, where many spots can expect at least a dusting to a couple of inches of snow, and then in some spots closer to 3 to 5, even getting closer to 6 or 7 inches on that possible high end as this makes its way on through. With that being said, I do want to go ahead and pivot on over here now without wasting any more time, and we're going to jump on over to the severe weather-related graphics for this storm system. Starting with the severe weather for Friday and Friday night, we'll break that down. Then we'll talk about the severe weather for Saturday and Saturday night, and then for anybody who's on here with me live on this stream, we will jump into talking about the questions that you may have about this particular event. What you're seeing on your screen, this is for Friday and Friday night. I can't stress that enough. Friday and Friday night is the time frame for what you're seeing on screen right now. This is a very potent severe weather outbreak that's going to be possible for parts of the mid-Mississippi Valley in particular, but anywhere from Minnesota all the way back down to Mississippi points in between. It's looking like a very dangerous event that we're going to be having as we go through the back half of Friday into Friday night, as dangerous storms are set to impact that region during the time frame, with the highest confidence in a line of very damaging winds, some of which could be upwards of 70 miles per hour, some damaging hail that could be even upwards of golf ball size, even tornadoes. That's going to be there in those orange and red shaded areas, particularly with the highest confidence in parts of southeast Iowa, eastern Missouri, into some parts of western and central Illinois. The threat for severe weather will likely be more conditional and isolated as you go down towards the lower Mississippi Valley, but strong tornadoes could still be possible even there into the evening and overnight with any activity that forms. I talked about this in yesterday's update, but of all the areas we have the highest confidence, and this is why it's highlighted in the deepest shaded color, this zone right here that I'm circling, and my pen's a little bit laggy, but this zone that I'm circling right here into some parts of Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois has a very high confidence in that dry line driven line of storms that is going to possibly contain very significant damaging winds as it moves on through. Further to the south, we're going to have actually more moisture than we have to the north, but the real question is actually going to be if we get storms to fire, at least during the Friday and Friday night period, as you come down here out of Arkansas and Louisiana and get into parts of Mississippi, Tennessee, and Alabama. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the Friday and Friday night threat. Actually, well, no, we're going to go ahead and time out the Friday and Friday night threat here, or what it could generally look like using this radar omega. Is this going to be exactly what this particular setup looks like? Probably not by the time we get around to it, but what you can generally see is that by the time we get into the evening hours here of our Friday, we are going to be likely watching storms firing on up here into some parts of Iowa, as you stretch on down here into northern Missouri as well. Some of these storms, especially as they initially fire up, even exiting parts of Nebraska and far northeastern Kansas, you could argue, will have the potential for not only the damaging winds that will be forced by the strong jet stream energy moving through the atmosphere, but even that potential for some spin-up tornadoes, some of which could be on that stronger side, even on up towards places like northern Iowa, far southeast South Dakota, far southern Minnesota. Wouldn't rule that type of activity out here past 5, 6, 7 o'clock. Really, as we get closer to the sundown time frame, especially of our Friday evening. Overall timeline for storms beginning to fire on up down into some parts of Missouri looks to be around and after sundown. It's going to be questionable if we get any storms in a place like Kansas City, Missouri, or Warrensburg, Missouri. It'll be around there or just east of there, where the big clouds you'll likely see moving through then turn into big scale thunderstorms. And wherever we do see these thunderstorms, they will pack a punch again. Damaging winds being the main threat as any of these move through eastern Iowa and eastern Missouri through our Friday evening. Through the level 4 and the level 5 of 7 zones on my custom ONW severe scale. That means widespread severe weather will likely be in place, and I'm very concerned about the widespread significant damaging winds that these storms could have to offer as they make their way on through, and I don't want to discount multiple parts of this threat. One, it's going to be a pretty expansive line of storms, so we could at least see, again, this is why you're highlighted in level 3 in a lot of southern Minnesota, we could at least see some damaging winds and a few spin-up tornadoes even getting on up towards northern Iowa and southern Minnesota out of this. It looks like by around 7, 8, 9, 10 in the evening, we'll be watching a strong line of storms racing into eastern Iowa that could bring similar threats, but maybe in more of a scattered to widespread fashion. And then as you come out of parts of Missouri into Illinois, probably going to be watching storms going strong after dark. That's another part of this. These are nocturnal storms. And, it doesn't take a tornado to cause lots of damage and throw around especially loose objects. 60 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts will likely be common even in some of the smaller looking storm cells that move through because of how driven these are going to be by the jet stream in the upper levels of the atmosphere. We'll also have to watch any of this activity that's a little bit even more isolated down here towards southern Missouri, around the Cape Girardeau region there of Missouri, getting into southern Illinois, Paducah, Kentucky, through the late evening, maybe getting towards midnight in the night, and any activity we even have all the way down to the lower Mississippi Valley. This doesn't look like much, but this is where we're actually going to have the most moisture pulling up towards this system, so I wouldn't rule out some severe weather down here, and that's what the Storm Prediction Center has been highlighting. Even though it's more conditional further south, we've got more of the way of moisture in place, and that's why a tornado threat, especially with the low-level jet stream kicking up, could be realized, especially into the overnight period, somewhere down further to the south along this general boundary. This HRRR model guidance, and I think that I'm buying this pretty nicely, brings some damaging winds and isolated hail and isolated tornadoes into southern Wisconsin as we get past midnight and into around the 1, 2 a.m. time frame of Saturday. Keep in mind that this could happen a few hours earlier or a few hours later than these individual timestamps that this model's panning out. Obviously, the best chance of severe weather as we go through the middle of the night and into the overnight, though, would be in these areas that still have a level 3 or level 4, at least on my ONW severe scale, through eastern Illinois, pushing into western Indiana, more damaging winds probably being the main threat, with a few embedded tornadoes possible in this generally broken line activity, possibly even multiple lines being driven into these zones as we get into the overnight hours Friday night to Saturday. And I still think parts of western Kentucky, down here into west central Tennessee, eventually pushing towards Nashville, even all the way down here towards the lower Mississippi Valley and parts of Mississippi, maybe even far western Alabama, anywhere where you find yourself around this line, and it could be anywhere in these general zones around, say, 3, 4 a.m. into our Saturday early morning where this is happening, we could definitely be seeing some spin-up tornadoes anywhere from the Gulf Coast all the way up towards Indiana and far southern Michigan as this line makes its way on through. That's going to be something we watch, and then by the time we go beyond there, we start to see more weakening of these cells by the time they're making their way eastward through the Ohio Valley, but still some isolated severe weather possible in northeast Kentucky, parts of Ohio early Saturday morning. More severe weather possibly firing up by that point in time as our second low pressure that I've been talking about begins to fire up down towards the deep south. And as you'll see with some timing here in just a minute, the deep south looks to be in a very concerning position for the severe weather that we could very well be seeing as we go into our Saturday, March 15th and that night. In fact, here is a look at my ONW severe scale graphic for that time frame. And I can't stress this enough. This is a very concerning look for severe weather. And I'm highlighting this after showing some of the machine learning guidance. That's basically just computers making a forecast based on historical guidance and other, forecasts and things that have gone on over past time. And yesterday it was highlighting a big bullseye zone for Mississippi, Alabama, and really a lot of the deep south, even some parts of Tennessee, Kentucky, for significant severe weather during this time frame. I wasn't fully buying into it yet. The Storm Prediction Center not buying into an extremely high threat fully just yet at that time, but at this point in time, they're highlighting a level 4 of 5 on their scale. I base my forecast somewhat on their scale, but also make some of my own perspectives and opinions when making this level 0 to 7 scale, and I'm projecting a level 6 of 7, possibly even getting upgraded by the time we get to this event, a level 7 of 7 severe weather event, almost as high as it can get, if not as high as it can get, for parts of the Deep South. Especially in Mississippi and Alabama for Saturday and Saturday night, as that second low helps in pulling up even more moisture, even more jet stream energy. But keep in mind, even if you're in the yellow, the dark green on the screen, you have a severe weather risk. You need to be reviewing your severe weather plan for Saturday and Saturday night, as you could indeed see some strong storms to even severe storms that could even include an isolated tornado there during that time frame. So again, this is the time to be getting prepared. It is Thursday. It was Wednesday yesterday, it was Tuesday the day before that, and I know me saying that seems pretty obvious, but there have been days of alert for this. I believe I've been talking about this storm since Saturday or Sunday, maybe even like last Friday with the first signs of it. There has been ample opportunity for you to begin getting prepared, whether you're in the Midwest or in the Mid-South or to the Ohio Valley, wherever you may be for this storm system, and now we're getting towards crunch time. We're getting towards the 24 to 48 hour period for this stuff to begin happening. And before you know it, you might shrug this off now, and then when the tornado's over your house, you won't be shrugging this off. So, a life-threatening situation is going to be very possible, not only with those storms Friday and Friday night, but I'm even more concerned about especially significant tornadoes if this event continues to be realized to look like it is for Louisiana, Mississippi, parts of Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, as we go through Saturday, and even with some nocturnal storms that could continue into Saturday night. So I want the seriousness of this threat to be conveyed to you, and I don't want anybody scared. I don't want anybody panicking. At the end of the day, whatever outcome is going to happen out of this situation is still going to happen, whether you panic or whether you sit there and you think of some preparations, you contact family that's in these affected areas, you make sure that you're reviewing your plan with your family if you're in these possible affected areas. So let's go ahead and break down the threat now that I've just kind of stressed the situation to you and you understand it a little bit more, how serious this could be for our Saturday and Saturday night. While confidence is a little bit lower up towards the Ohio Valley, and that's why I've got a lot of those zones in the level 2 to level 3, between some of the broken activity from the first low earlier in the day and then some of the new energy that could move up later in the day into Saturday night, we have a lot more confidence in intense severe weather in Arkansas, the far southeastern part of the state to be exact, into a lot of Louisiana, and to pretty much all of Mississippi in a level 5 or 6 on the scale, into parts of Alabama. We've got Georgia, and into Georgia, some parts of Tennessee, and then down into the Florida Panhandle. A lot of the threat will turn into a nocturnal threat into Saturday night. So even if it's not the highest risk of severe weather and there's a little bit less coverage, say, of possible intense tornadoes, this is a situation where you've got to be prepared because some of this could come into the nighttime as well. And I want to break down some of the setup for especially this Saturday and Saturday night event, because I think we're going to have a lot more damaging winds and some occasional tornadoes if the threat for Friday and Friday night continues to look like it will. Am I saying we couldn't have some strong tornadoes even all the way down to the lower Mississippi Valley Friday and Friday night? No, I'm not saying that's not a possibility. I'm just saying this looks even worse, and let me show you why. Looking at some guidance here from some of our short-range models as they're now continuing to come in. Again, this model only goes up to 48 hours out, and the fact that I'm able to play this out and get a decent bit of this event on my screen is telling me that we're getting into crunch time. You need to be getting prepared if you have not already for what could be coming. And again, a lot of this is going to happen into Saturday, so if you haven't prepared yet and you can't prepare in the next 12 hours if you live down in the Mid-South, make sure you're reviewing your severe weather safety plan, knowing that lowest, most interior room of your home or building. And of course, especially even damaging winds can throw around loose outdoor objects. Trampolines become a big issue, so make sure those are getting tucked away, anchored down better, things like that. This is your significant tornado parameter graphic, and this is basically this short-range guidance, your HRRR model, putting together a lot of different factors and then putting it together on a 0 to 10 scale. I know I do a lot of scales here on the channel, whether it's a Storm Prediction Center one, my severe weather scale, or this. But this is showing on a 0 to 10 scale how intense the ingredients are for particularly tornado, and you can look at it with general severe weather development as well. As we go into the nighttime tomorrow night, so this is Friday and Friday night's event, first of all. Let's just start with that. Look at the ingredients for that time frame. Up into Iowa, some energy. Illinois, some energy. If we get storms to fire out of southern Missouri into parts of Arkansas, those could be even more concerning for a tornado potential, although the coverage looks a little bit more conditional in those zones. Be on the lookout, though, because, again, Friday and Friday night could be severe there, even all the way down to Louisiana and Mississippi. As early as Friday into Friday night, you could get a round of the severe storms out of that first part of the system that I was talking about. And then as the second low-pressure system is going to move up into Saturday, that's when things are likely going to become more concerning. And you can see that down there into the Mid-South region. Let's zoom in on it here with my regional filter on this awesome WeatherBell model map. There you go. I mean, I don't think this needs too much explaining. You see the pinks that are going to move through parts of Mississippi and Alabama, and it's just going to be a big swath of energy that's going to come through a lot of these zones through Saturday, and that's the furthest I can push this short-range guidance out as of when I'm doing this live stream. By Friday into Saturday, I'll be able to push this out even more. So I'm sure I'll have another live update or two as we go through the near-term to mid-range, through the near-term couple of days here to cover more about this storm. In terms of the wind speeds that are going to be going on in the atmosphere, let's take a look at some of that. As you come up into the sky, look at how strong the jet stream is going to be pulsing through with Friday's round of severe weather. First of all, that's your jet stream as you get on up at least into the low to mid levels, really curling around very strong through, again, those areas I have highlighted: Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas, and some of those winds will be veering with height into the atmosphere, and that's why, in addition to the very strong straight line wind threat that I think is going to lead Friday's and Friday night's event, we could see some tornadoes, especially with more discrete cells further south, and possibly even a little bit initially on the northern side of our convection. Then here we go, let's jump this straight on over to around our Saturday afternoon time frame. The jet stream's cranking up even more, and if we get closer to the surface with this lower level wind, you see that area of red right there over Mississippi and Alabama? That is straight south to north winds that are going to be pumping up into that second low pressure system and bringing up even more additional moisture than the first one that moved on up into the upper Midwest could do. Again, around this time Saturday, you've already had one low pressure system that helped with that conditional threat Friday and Friday night with pulling up moisture. And then you've got another one right here around Arkansas by this point in time. Two low pressures of very strong magnitude pulling up jet stream energy, pulling up moisture. The winds are veering with height in the atmosphere. I mean, what better of a setup could you have for severe weather? I know that sounds terrible to say, but this is what we're looking at, folks. And again, you need to be getting prepared if you're in some of these areas for Friday and Friday night. I mean, the time's now for that, because by the end of Friday, they're going to be bearing down on top of you in parts of the Midwest and the mid-Mississippi Valley. And you got a little bit more time, possibly in some parts of Mississippi and Alabama. But by Saturday morning, stuff could already be firing up. So be on the lookout and make sure that by the end of Friday, you've got your plans in place and everything is all tied down outside, again, for this event that we could have. Here's a look at, as far as I can push out, the HRRR short-range model guidance into our Saturday. And this is why I am concerned, very much so. This is your second low-pressure system. forming up. You can literally see all the moisture and energy that's going to come with it. First of all, by the end of the day, we'll have so many rounds of storms over this circled region of Kentucky, Tennessee, back down into the northern parts, especially of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, that we could see some scattered to even numerous reports of flooding coming in these zones. I don't want to discount that factor as well. We could see some isolated flooding even back down into some parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, Florida, points east as we go with time. But this is the concerning look already that I'm seeing, and this is basically the furthest out I can push this model right now. But this is the beginning of some of the worst storm development that the HRRR model is showing for our Saturday afternoon. And a supercell thunderstorm looks like a hook, and hook echo is the shape that you get when you're looking at a classic textbook supercell storm on a radar, and a hook echo looks somewhat like this. I just drew it there near Montgomery, Alabama, in that clear space on screen again, kind of like that. That's the shape. And unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of indications on this model we could have that here into our Saturday. Again, out of the morning into the afternoon, beginning, as we've already seen that initial boundary that brings the conditional threat into late Friday night. As that moves through and then the second low kind of picks it up, even more energy is going to move into these zones, and it looks like it could be even worse with the severe weather threat developing through the day Saturday. I mean, all the way from parts of Louisiana and then all the way on up here through Mississippi by this point in time, already seeing a lot of those hook shapes. Hook shape there, hook shape there, there. Too many there's to be saying for a model. This is a computer model guidance, and the fact that it's showing this well-defined look for all of these supercells is very concerning. And of course, the environment would only become even more unstable further north as we go through the rest of the afternoon. One thing that could be a saving grace for this event is if enough storms move over the same areas over and over again, that there's not enough instability for the next ones to pull into. But this whole area here looks like it could turn devastating, if not already, after being devastating in some parts of Louisiana earlier on Saturday and then pushing into points east. From Saturday morning to Saturday night, beginning in these zones and then pushing further east in these spots I'm circling, a very damaging tornado event could get going. And I don't want to disclude North Florida. I also don't want to disclude Kentucky, Tennessee, even some isolated to scattered severe weather being possible on up into parts of the Ohio Valley. So this is going to be a complex setup. I've shown you the ingredients, and I don't really know what else I could say about this other than that just you need to be continuing to get prepared. And again, let me show you that risk graphic I've made one more time just so you can see where the highest risk is being projected by me. By the way, where you see this pink on your screen as I pull up this graphic down there in Mississippi and Alabama is where I think the Storm Prediction Center is possibly going to go level 5 of 5, the highest risk they can possibly issue, a high risk into parts of Mississippi and Alabama. Possibly here for our Saturday, very much so possible. I wouldn't rule out a high risk for our Friday and Friday night, but I think that's so wind-driven it's going to remain a moderate on their scale. But what you're looking at is my custom severe weather scale here on the screen. But again, this continues to look like it could be devastating. Lives are going to be on the line with these kinds of storms. So try to lessen the chance that your life is on the line by making those safe precautions. Always keep in mind as well that the chance of a strong tornado, a life-threatening tornado, impacting your very building, your very mobile home, your very apartment, your very structure, wherever you live, is very low. But there's always the chance, and if you have a chance to prepare, why not do it? I can't stress that enough. I keep saying it over and over, but that's what we're looking at here. This is a very dire situation based on some of the ingredients I've been looking at. And I might try to provide another update early on our Friday morning with a live update. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you have notifications on for my channel for that update. That is possible. If I don't do one Friday morning, I might do one later in the day Friday to talk about some of these threats that could come in the future beyond the Friday storms and then as we go into Saturday as well once again. But let's see if there's anybody with me here on this current live stream that I'm doing. Whether you're with me live or watching after, you can always leave comments down below. Let's see if we've had any questions about certain areas. I'm just going to start reading some of the recent comments. It looks like, yep, Shamarin Silent Blade, I hope I said that correctly. yeah, talking to someone else about the fact that chances are low that it will hit you specifically, even in a setup like this. So don't be scared, be hyper aware, and respect tornado warnings. Couldn't have said it better myself. Again, have a way to receive alerts, and that's exactly what you need to do. But yes, of course, it'll always be a good idea to be sending prayers up for these possible affected areas as well. But yeah, please, yeah, don't take me saying lives on the line as trying to scare you. Take it as me trying to be like a nagging parent or something who wants you to get prepared for some sort of, this is a terrible analogy, but like some sort of schoolwork event or like a test coming up. I don't know. Something along those lines. And I want you to make sure that you're ready so that just in case, the event's worse than it is, or the test is harder than you thought it was going to be, you're ready. Something along those lines. Chad Duncan says, what about North Central Arkansas? Okay, we can talk about that zone here with my ONW severe scale. So here's the areas I have highlighted. North Central Arkansas for Friday. This says March 14th, but this also includes Friday night. We've got a level 3 to level 4 in northern Arkansas. I think there's a potential we get some damaging winds or some tornadoes there, maybe even a strong tornado not being out of the question during the Friday and Friday night time frame, but you're kind of in the more conditional zone. The highest risk for more widespread activity is going to be up into Missouri, Iowa, and Illinois, but the ceiling's high enough in your area that if we do see storms firing up, especially Friday evening, North Central Arkansas could at least see scattered severe weather, and be prepared for that just in case. Chad. As we go into our Saturday and Saturday night, North Central Arkansas looks to be out of the worst of the severe weather as of now. It could be just 100 miles to your south and east, though, where we're seeing a very dangerous and damaging severe weather event ongoing by the time we get into our Saturday morning, getting into the afternoon and evening. So, if you have any family or friends that's down southeast of you, especially into our Saturday, those folks should be concerned, or at least being prepared anyway, for this event in those spots. Could North Alabama possibly get upgraded? CJ says, yeah, you could. I do think some of that continuing convection or storminess that we get throughout a lot of the day on Saturday could help in keeping it a little bit more stable there. But I've got you in a 5 of 7 already. You need to be taking that seriously. Northeast Philly suburbs. That's a great question there, Brandon McMasters. I've been talking all about this deep south stuff and the Midwest stuff. Here's a look at my severe zones graphic for our March 16th. This is for our Sunday and Sunday night severe weather, as this will continue to push east. As of now, I'm already anticipating that I'll be putting a level 2 of 7 out at the minimum from North Florida there in the northern panhandle, all the way on up to far southern New York and southwestern Connecticut. I do believe that northeastern Philly could have a threat for especially damaging winds, maybe a tornado too as we go through, especially Sunday afternoon. So you'll want to be prepared there around that time frame for some generally gusty winds as well that the storm system will have to offer, as well as some of that heavy rain. Mikey Banks says, will Johnson City, Tennessee be hit significantly? I'm very scared. Again, first of all, let's not be scared. I know it's, it is a scary situation, sure. But, at the end of the day, being scared is not going to change the outcome. Think of it that way. That's about all I can say. I hope that helps. But if not, here's the data that you want to see with that severe scale. I've got Johnson City, Tennessee on the edge of a 3 to a 4. I think damaging winds would be the biggest threat up that far north. But we could even see some scattered tornadoes getting there, especially before we get to the Tennessee-North Carolina line and those mountains. And some of that could be with a nocturnal type of threat through Saturday and into Saturday night. We could definitely see storms during the daylight hours Saturday, but some of the worst storms might come in during the post-dusk hours. So be on the lookout for some strong storms that could even be nocturnal in Johnson City, Tennessee, and be prepared for that now. Western Kentucky has been the hot seat for Friday night, Grim Graves says. But in southeastern Kentucky, is southeastern Kentucky going to be in the same boat for Saturday? I think Southeast Kentucky's in a little bit of a better situation for Saturday as of now. I do have you in a level 3 of 7 on my severe scale, given the fact that as we see that warm front that comes with that second low and we see more moisture being pulled up through the day Saturday and into Saturday night, we could get some severe weather to eventually fire there. But right now, I have you in the level 3 of 7 because it's a little bit more conditional that far north. If anything, I'd say a flood threat could even become more of a problem into those zones as we continue to see rain training over some of the same areas. For the folks who are asking about some of these set zones, I do have a model that came out around mid-afternoon, the NAM model. This can go a little bit further than that HRRR guidance I was showing a minute ago. It's not my favorite model to look at for this kind of information, but why not? Let's go ahead and pull it up and just give you a general idea of what some of these storms may look like in places like Kentucky or other areas as we get deeper into Saturday and Saturday night. It has a fairly similar look to the HRRR with some of those worse storms and more isolated cells back down here out of Tennessee into parts of Mississippi, exiting Louisiana, and then eventually heading through the southern and central parts of Mississippi into Alabama. This model does a pretty good job of indicating that, it doesn't look extremely horrible in eastern Kentucky and southeastern Kentucky, especially given the timing of the storms into the night and being along the northern edge of a line. But we'll have to watch as we get, especially through the late day time frame Saturday into Saturday night, for some of these storms to be on that feistier end up here. And again, that's why we're watching the level 3 of 7 I have on my severe scale there. As scattered damaging winds and maybe some tornadoes could become a threat. It is a little bit more conditional there, though. Friday setup is looking like a squall line setup that could see a derecho with embedded tornadoes. Shamaran says, yes, that is a very good, what's the word? That's a very good way of looking at it. I will say, again, if we see anything else other than that squall line that we see through Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois, back down to the south, then we could see more of those discrete supercells even, with this first round before our Saturday and Saturday night round. The late Friday night, very early Saturday round could bring some severe weather down there towards Arkansas, far east Texas, into Louisiana, Mississippi, parts of Tennessee, western Kentucky. We'll have to kind of see about that. It's definitely a high risk that Iowa, Missouri, Illinois do see that very strong wind threat, possibly even a derecho due to the extended nature of the damaging wind threat with significant gusts. And again, we could see embedded tornadoes even with that damaging wind line. Jackson County, Alabama, Sammy says, I'll check back with you in just a minute. If you can just tell me what part of Alabama that's in, I will let you, let's just talk about Alabama as a whole. You can see on screen right now level 5 to a level 6 of 7 on the ONW severe scale. So a very concerning look for a lot of Alabama. We could see multiple rounds beginning as early as Saturday morning, but especially through Saturday afternoon and evening that could bring damaging winds in a widespread fashion. And again, Saturday's mode looks even more concerning for those discrete storms with possibly some hail and very concerning tornadoes. So be on the lookout for that there. Again, into Jackson County, Alabama. That's going to be into our Saturday and Saturday night. Jake saw some vid said Wisconsin. Is Wisconsin good? The southeastern part of the state. I'd say you're probably okay. However, you're in a level 3 of 7, so you need to be prepared for at least scattered severe weather in southeastern Wisconsin. I might even upgrade you to a 4 due to damaging winds and isolated tornadoes that could come through, and it will be possibly, or in fact very much so, nocturnal as we get into our Friday evening there. So you need to be watching out for those threats, as whatever's left of that line coming in from the southwest to the northeast could continue to be potent as it comes to your direction. Chad Duncan said, thanks for me answering his question a minute ago. I believe you're very welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Share this information out with family and friends as well. At least the forecasting part of my live stream, even after this update is over, could be useful to folks. So again, to the 48 of you who are in here, make sure you're sharing this out. Let's see what else we've got. I answered the question about Philly just a minute ago. How do I think this will compare to the derecho last year in the Wisconsin area? If you can familiarize me with exactly what event you're talking about, that would be good. This might be embarrassing that my weather knowledge isn't telling me what derecho you're talking about. CJ says the local weather says that the morning storms won't weaken the storms later because it won't affect the Cape. Yeah, convective available potential energy. I mean, a second low pressure system pulling up a lot of moisture and instability probably will make those earlier day storms a little bit less of a factor. But even the earlier day storms could become a problem. So, do I think Madison could get a lot of warnings in Wisconsin, particularly for straight line winds? Where'd that one go? Oh, during the Friday storms? I mean, yeah, certainly a lot of warnings could come on in for especially the damaging winds of 60 to 70 miles per hour that could be possible there, continuing in from the southwest to the northeast, and even some tornadoes. Yeah, that's very much possible. Looks like we are good in Virginia, Lee says. hold up a minute. Virginia could see some storms in the western part of the state as early as Saturday night, and more storms are anticipated in at least isolated scattered fashion that could be severe into Sunday. So hold your horses on that and be prepared for at least some isolated to scattered severe weather. I wouldn't be shrugging anything off in that zone just yet. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and kind of close out this live stream update. As I've answered most of the city-based questions I'm having with me on live right now, make sure hitting that like button if you have not already, sharing this out with folks who might want this information. Again, maybe we'll have a live update. I'm probably going to schedule one in case I do for maybe around 8 Eastern, 7 Central, and you could also watch that after I do it on our Friday morning to talk more on these threats. We'll see what I do with that. Maybe I'll do an update later in the day, in the afternoon or something. We'll see. Either way, I'll catch you here next time, especially if you have those notifications on. You won't miss a beat right here. But thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate all the support, as always. Send this out. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time as we continue.